My name is Sherry Sutherland, and I am here today with Mr. Mark Gagne, the department chair at Stewart's Creek High School, and Mr. Coleman Wise, the special ed department chair at Smyrna High School. And we are going to look at primarily today the research that discusses female leadership in regard to how people, the subordinates that they have, look at them, and how that comparison is similar or different to male leadership. So we have successful female leadership as defined by social perceptions, expectations, and common traits. When you look at, and one of the reasons that I considered and thought about doing this is that there is a study of Fortune 500 companies that shows there are only 4.8% that have women in charge of them. A scale study in 2011 of 60,740 men and women found that when it came to choosing the gender of their boss, 46% had a strong preference for a male superior by more than a 2-to-1 ratio, not citing the positive attributes of the male leader, but rather the negative attributes of the female leader, which is one of the reasons why looking at this study was to determine, are women looked at by the job they do, or are they looked at because of them being a female, of whether they're successful or not. Some of the reasons that we see with this is that women and men are more effective in roles and leadership styles that are congruent with their gender. Society still at times will perceive that a woman is better at one thing and a man is better at another. For example, when we are looking at professions, women are still looked to do better in areas of education, government, and social service organizations, while men are still looked to be better at military, science, and sports. One of the reasons that I discovered when I was looking through this is that there are not enough female mentors who are successful leaders. And obviously that goes back to this study, and that there just are not as many. But you also find in the research that women tend to be a little bit more hesitant about mentoring each other than men are with each other. And we also have then the stereotypes, and women do not ask for promotion and raises as much as men do. And you know, the stereotypical thing that you have always heard when you're looking at female leaders is the glass ceiling. Now, as we have progressed, that glass ceiling, if you talk to famous female leaders, they'll say that it doesn't exist, that they don't believe in it. But what's interesting is it may not be that there was actually a glass ceiling as much of women just didn't ask for the promotion or raises. So it may be that it wasn't that they weren't going to get it, but they may not have been considered for it because they didn't ask for it. There's also a management research group which released 2 studies of more than 7,000 leaders showing that there were significantly behavioral differences between men and women in their leadership roles. Now, when we're looking at these studies, and these are the things that popped up when people were given different areas and asked what they thought a successful female leader was. One of those is that a female leader will base the self-worth on the degree to which she is needed. A male leader bases his worth on the role of the job. How many people do they lead? What is the significance of their role, and what type of a business that they're in? Female leaders also have a better work and home balance, but it's also kind of double-edged sword there, because when a woman wants to go out and have a career that may take time away from her family, sometimes she is looked at or perceived as selfish because she's not giving her time to her family. Also, a woman multitasks very well, understands the importance of first impressions, willing to ask for help and collaborate with networking, becoming better as a mentor, persuasive motivation, circular vision, setting high goals and moving the bar once those goals are met, and believes that success is not a one-time thing. that it is something that you have to continually work at. Male and female leaders are treated equally when involved with decision making with subordinates. So this is an interesting characteristic that we find. So if I sat down with the two of you being males and we were to discuss a decision process about what's going to happen at school or what might work best, we tend to all look at each other as equals. But when a woman starts acting authoritatively, or when women leaders become angry, they are disliked much more than men in those situations. So it is a different perspective that people have just based on gender. Looking at the theoretical and conceptual frameworks of this, theoretically, gender studies have been influenced by postmodernism, arguing that gender is not a fixed category, but rather a social construction. So it is something that we perceive. It's not an actual thing that's there. It's how people actually that look at it, or how they're raised, or how they're taught. Feminist historian Joan Scott examines how gender discourse has historically served to construct and legitimize gender hierarchies. And we have seen in recent years that this is starting to go away, and it's not seen as much. When you look at it conceptually, it's the study of leadership by gender, and then that can be broken down into two parts. You have obviously social perceptions and expectations, and whether those are different based on whether it's a male or female leader. And then when we look at what do successful female leaders do, and what female leaders say, and what was the reason for her success. And like I was saying earlier, it's interesting when you look at the research on this and you're looking at interviews with successful women, and they're asked, do you believe that your being a woman was a negative for you? And almost across the board, and I've read like 50 interviews on women who are very, very successful, there were hardly any of them that said that it was a drawback. So that's the interesting part on why this research would be interesting, is you have lots of studies and lots of data saying that there are differences. But when you actually look at females who have become very important and very wealthy, most of those women say that it was never a drawback. So it might actually be a mindset of the female in these perspectives. Many studies show that gender is an important variable in analyzing leadership styles, and sociological research agrees. But the culture of society is also very important to look at when considering these differences. So obviously my research on this in the United States would be much different than if I did this research in a Middle Eastern country, or maybe an African country. According to a recent meta-analysis, the perception of women leaders is gaining strength. It's important to look at the term and understand what role congruity means when synthesizing male versus female leadership characteristics. And that's like what I was saying earlier, is what are other people's perceptions of male versus female? Is it that these people believe, well, this is her role, or this is his role in that? It has also been found that women who promote their own interests are seen as aggressive, uncooperative, and selfish. The development of a woman leader has only developed within the past 100 years, so many women feel as if they need to be one of the boys when they do get into these roles. Important qualities to look at when viewing leadership that are normally stated is age, appearance, and mentors. When I was looking at all of the studies and the research on female leaders, when women are younger and become in a leadership role, there's still a pretty big disparity in how they're looked upon versus a male equal. But as a woman gets older and the longer she's been in a position, studies actually showed that she gains more respect than the male that's in the equal role. Another interesting type is that women now hold close to 60% of all graduate degrees. A little bit here that I did want to tell you about, you might find interesting, is that one of the most interesting pieces I found on females and ultimately female leadership is an article about appearance. We have found that with women, the appearance is definitely judged much more than it is of a male. So women who advance most at work, studies agree, are more attractive, thinner, taller, and have a more youthful appearance than their female colleagues who are promoted less often. The study also stated that the best looking echelon of attractive females, the top 1/3, make about 10% more annually than those in the bottom 6. And also that a woman who is 5 feet 7 inches tall, well above the national average of 5 foot 3 inches, will make close to $5,500 more over the course of a year than a female that stands 5 foot 2. They also found a lot of stuff about women and what they wear. Like people actually, their perceptions of them based on the length of their skirt or how high their shoes are, which we were talking about first impressions earlier, is one of the other things that they look at. In conclusion, when we're looking at this research and asking questions, first, do men and women actually lead differently? Second, how does perceived leader behavior and gender behavior relate to employee expectations? Third, is there a common set of traits that male and female leaders share, and does gender play a part in what traits are associated with successful leaders? Finally, what are the common views and attributes that successful women leaders share that can be passed on to women who are trying to attain these leadership positions? Interaction with the participants will involve interviews and questionnaires that will build a base of data and knowledge about female leadership and ultimately how females become successful. When looking at this research, it will definitely be a qualitative study. And to get this kind of information, it's much more important to have personal interaction with people. And so this data will be gathered with interviews, focus groups, and surveys. The interviews are going to be used to explore the ideas that leaders have about themselves. And when I was talking earlier about when you look at the interviews of female leaders and their perceptions of whether they were ever held back by their gender or not. Focus groups, you can gain a wide range of views in a very short period of time with these. You can put a lot of people into a room, and when you have these focus groups and these focus interviews, it would have to be recorded because you have a lot of stuff going on at one time, but you can see a lot of different perceptions and ideas at once. It's a quicker way to gather information. And then a web-based survey, which will be designed to improve response rates and get information in quickly. Participants in this study are to understand how employees respond to leaders based on gender. And to do this accurately, it would be a good idea to have different professions, not just one. So maybe studying participants from 3 different areas, such as a technology profession, the education profession, and the industrial profession. That way you can cross-reference them and look and see if there's actually different perceptions based on the profession that they're in. Data will be collected over a 6-month period of time and consist of the interviews, focus groups, and a survey. And one-on-one interviews will be conducted via in person and on the telephone with female leaders in leadership positions. The data analysis will be a grounded analysis, and it will be used for coding. And with this analysis, themes emerge from the discussions, transcripts, and surveys. All of these themes and ideas present themselves. They can be color-coded to identify the different themes and grouping together ideas and evidence about the answers and employee views. And there are computer programs that can actually take qualitative information and studies now and process that to color-code it and make it easier to see where the common ideas were. So, any questions at this time?
I would just wonder, you mentioned that the perception of women in the workforce as being leaders. Do you think that right now we're on a growing edge where that perception is getting better and better, and it almost will snowball because the more we start to see women in the leadership roles?